Good morning everybody, how are you? Welcome back, I hope you're doing well. So over the last couple of days I've been doing lots of making, just simple journal cards and pockets and working with book pages. And as I was doing it and looking through what I'd done, I noticed that they follow quite a similar style. So I'm just having a flick through here. What I thought I would do today is start going over the things that I include in my ephemera. So if I'm making a piece, like if I'm making a journal card, I'm going to go through the aspects that I tend to put onto ephemera pieces. So for example, if we take this one, you can see that I've got some form of base, which is a book page. Then we have some painted paper, a focal point and a label. And that seems to pretty much be the same on most things that I have created here. So I like to mix older things with newer things. I like to mix things that don't necessarily go together, such as a tropical bird with this change booth label. Here I've got some fabric. I've included some fabric, and there's another one here with some fabric as well. We've got things like, I don't know if you can see here, painted tissue papers. And again here, this is a painted tissue paper, this blue here that I've just stuck on. And there's another example here. So today I thought we would, oh, this is a nice one. These green leaves I painted onto just white tissue paper to use as a collage sheet. So what I thought I would do today is go over the way I do painted papers, the papers I use, the types of papers I use, the effect that they give, and the different types of paints and mediums and things like that that I use on the papers. So that's what we'll start with today, and then over the next couple of videos we'll use them to put together some ephemera bits like we've done here. So I'm going to go and grab a couple of bits and pieces, and then I will be back with you. I'll see you in a bit. So first off, these are the different types of papers that I tend to work with. So we've got old book pages, and also some just tea dyed, coffee dyed papers. So that's one thing I like to use to paint on. Next, we have tissue paper. So lots of different varieties of patterns on here. That's another thing I like to use. And this is a bigger piece of tissue paper. And also at the back here we have some, I think it's called, is it newspaper? Yeah, I was going to say magazine paper, but it's not. It's newspaper print paper. Newspaper paper, okay? And lots of different patterns on there as well. One thing that I haven't got an example of here, but that I may try today, is tracing paper. I don't think I've ever painted onto tracing paper, so I would be interested to see the effect that that gives. So what I'm going to do is show you once these different types of papers are stuck down, the effect that they have on the paper. So give me 2 ticks and I will get some bits cut up, and then I will show you what they look like. Okay, so I've got some book page here that we'll do our sticking onto. I've also got a piece of the tissue paper, a piece of the newspaper, and a piece of book page. So we'll start with the tissue paper. I'm going to grab some glue. And Pritt Stick is fine for this tissue. In fact, it works really well actually with tissue paper. So we're going to stick the tissue paper down like so. Don't matter if it wrinkles, because when you smooth it out, that will sort itself. Okay, so there is the tissue paper. And as you can see, because the tissue paper is so thin, you get to see the text underneath. So that's always quite an interesting effect. If you were doing something like a mixed media collage piece and you wanted to use lots of different layers and you wanted the layers to be able to be seen through, tissue paper is a really good option for that. The next one we'll stick down is this newsprint paper. It isn't see-through, but it is thin. So if I show you on here, stick that down. So as you can see, this isn't, in fact, actually you can just see through it a little bit. It's nowhere near as thin as this, and it's nowhere near as see-through as the tissue paper. However, it's very, very lightweight, and it's really good for collaging because it doesn't add bulk to your project. So if you were collaging a pocket or a tag or something within a journal, this is a really good option. In fact, when I did the envelope pockets in the last video, I actually printed onto this type of paper so that I didn't add too much bulk onto the pocket itself, because I wanted to be able to fold it and then put it inside a journal. So that's a really good option if you were collaging, didn't necessarily need to see the layers underneath, but didn't want to add extra bulk to your project. And lastly, let's do this. So this is just a normal book page, and as you would expect, oops, as you would expect, that's not see-through at all. That is really nice for just adding extra texture and adding some interest to what you're doing. So those are the 3 types of papers that at the moment I have been painting onto and using in my projects. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and grab a piece of tracing paper, because I would be really interested to see how that compares. So I will be back in a minute. Just let me go and grab that. Right, so I've got with me some tracing paper and a Posca pen. We'll talk about the different types of pens and things in a second. I've also just pulled out this to show you the type of paper, the newsprint paper that I've been using. So 43 GSM, so it's very thin, made in Britain, and it's kind of a, I don't know, maybe close to a deli paper. I'm not sure, because I've never really owned deli paper. But yeah, this is the that's the make, Frisk, and I think I just ordered it from Amazon, to be honest. So that's the newsprint paper that I've been using. But right, let's have a go at doing just some marks on this tracing paper. So we'll just do something like this. Doesn't need to be. There you go, doesn't need to be anything fancy. Now that will dry very quickly. Posca pens do. Posca pens are an acrylic, they're acrylic paint basically in a pen. And the benefit of them is that they do dry really, really quickly. So if you're doing a project and you're in a rush, or if you're on video, Posca pens are a really good option. They are also really, really opaque, so you get a really good colour payoff with a Posca pen. And I'm hoping there's not too many shadows because it's a very strange overcast day today. So I'm just going to cut that off. This is just about dry. I'm going to get some glue. Let's stick that down and we'll see what happens in comparison with this one. Right. Okay, so there is the tracing paper. I would say the opaqueness is probably about the same as the tissue paper. It's just a little bit thicker. So that would be another option if you didn't have tissue paper, or if you didn't have something like this newsprint paper, but you had some tissue paper, I think, not tissue paper, tracing paper, because tracing paper is, it's reasonably cheap to buy. I've just seen in the works you can get 50 sheets for, I think it was £2. So that's quite reasonable, and you'd get a lot of leeway with that as well. You could do lots with 50 sheets of tissue with tracing paper. I'm sorry, I can't speak today, my words getting jumbled. So yeah, so those are the four different options, and you can see the various effects that you can get with them. So next we will go over the different mediums that I use while I'm doing this. So give me a second and I will go and get those. Okay, so these are predominantly the 3 types of mediums that I tend to use when I'm doing painted papers. So first of all, probably my favourite is the Posca pen. The Posca pen, like I was explaining before, is acrylic based. It's a very opaque paint and it's a very quick drying paint. They're also obviously really convenient because they're in a pen format, so you can carry them about nice and easy. You don't need a paintbrush, you don't need any water. So there's a lot of benefits to the Posca pen. However, the downside is that they are very costly. I think a pack of 5 or 6 is about £28. So they're not cheap. They do last quite a while depending on the project that you're doing with them, but they are not cheap. There are cheaper alternatives that you can get. Amazon do a lot of different acrylic paint pens and things like that. I bought a set which are good. They're not as good as the Posca pen. The Posca pen have a very smooth, can you see? They have a very rounded nib so they don't scratch. I have found with cheaper ones that they're a bit pointier and a bit harder, and they can scratch on the paper as you're using them. But again, if you're doing something like this, it's not really going to be a problem. So what I will do, if I remember, I will dig out the cheaper set that I have to show you those as an alternative. So Posca pen, one of my go-tos, probably my most popular go-to. The next would be a gouache, or a thinner acrylic paint. Now gouache is somewhere between acrylic and watercolour. So it's got a thicker consistency, but it's not quite as thick and gloopy as acrylic paint can get. And that's why I like it for doing the painted papers, because I feel like I have a little bit more control. This does say acrylic on it, however it's a thinner acrylic. It's not a thick, you know, like sometimes you will squeeze acrylic out and it just gloops all over your, you know, whatever it is you're using to put your paint into. This doesn't. It's a thinner type of acrylic, and I did find that the consistency is quite similar to the gouache. So if I was to, I'll put a little bit out on here to show you. So this is the gouache. Now this is quite old. So it may be a little bit thicker than normal, but this is the gouache. If you can see, I hope you can see, it's got quite a runny consistency, even though it's a lot thicker than a watercolour. I'll show you this pink one as well. It's been, I don't think this has been opened actually. Yes, it has. Again, this is an acrylic, and it is thicker than the gouache because it's, you know, it is acrylic, it's not gouache, but it's not as thick as a full, like a thick acrylic paint. But the gouache would be my second choice probably if I felt like getting pens out, not pens, paintbrushes out, and being a little bit more messy. Then the gouache would be my second choice, and my third choice would just be a normal artist acrylic. And again, I will show you the difference if I can. So this is a lot thicker. You can see it peaks up when I do that. It's not going to run as much, which is another great option. Not my preferred because of its thickness, but another great option. The good thing about these types of paints is that they are reasonably cheap. These were, I got a fluorescent set, and I got a, I think it was a pastel set from Aldi, and they were about £2.50, and I got a set of 8, I think. And these ones, these are just from the works. I think you can get a quite a reasonably sized set for about £4. So, and you know, they do last because you're not going to be using them all the time. So these are good as a very cheap option to the Posca pen. Okay, so I've got all my bits here ready to do some mark making. I have found the cheaper version of the acrylic paints. Is it Thule Art, I think. I can't remember how much they were, but I do have a big bag of them. Oops, there you go, you can see them there. I do have a big bag of them, so there must have been about perhaps 30 in a pack, which works out at much better value for money than the Posca pens. So I've got some of those out. I'm going to use those today because I'm aware that not everybody is going to have access to the Posca pen. So I've got those. And that's the card that came in the box, just with all the information on there, if you'd like to have a look at that. I've also got out some Posca pens, and I've also got out some gouache and the thinner acrylics, and I've got a little palette and some paintbrushes. They're not fancy paintbrushes at all, they're just the pack of 6 that you get from IKEA. I think they're about £1.50 for 6, so every time I go to IKEA I just stock up on a few. So let's try first this tissue paper, and let's do, first of all, let's do a Posca pen. Now a Posca pen, I'll just show you the advice to give it a good shake first. Can you hear the clicking? That shows that the paint's well mixed within the barrel. So you do this, the first time you use any type of acrylic pen, you need to hold it upside down, and you need to press the nib down gently. You can't see it at that angle, but press it down gently like that until the paint starts to flow. Obviously this has been used, so I don't need to do that, but I do always test it onto a piece of paper just to make sure it's working okay. So let's have a look. What could we do? Right, I think I'll start off doing, oh, see, this has never happened before. I've never used the Posca pens on tissue paper. And can you see what's happened? It's gone through, so I wasn't expecting that. Unless that's just a very watery, pen, because I've just been messing about with it. Let me just try another and see. Yeah, see, that one's fine. Goes through a little bit. I think I'm just going to protect my desk. Goes through a little bit, but it's not bleeding, so I think that may have been because I'd been messing around. So let's do some little circles like this onto the tissue paper. Now I always work with smaller bits of paper because they're just easier to manage, and it's all going to be cut up, so I don't worry too much about placement. I just get some patterns and some different mark making down onto the page. So this is a particular favourite of mine, just kind of blobs. Okay, so that was that Posca pen. Let's try one of these cheaper acrylics. Just give it a shake. Okay, give it a test. Right, so as I say, can you see, like I was saying with the Posca pen, the top's quite round, whereas with these cheaper ones, they're more pointed. It's more of a pointy edge. They do scratch a little bit, but we'll give them a go. Let's do, and you can probably hear the scratchy. But for doing something like this, you don't need anything that's going to be absolutely perfect. But can you hear the scratching? So if you're doing it on tissue paper, oh, it's quite a nice effect, isn't it? If you're doing it on tissue paper, just be wary of that. And don't press too hard. There you go. So this is the type of thing that I would do. And let's try the pink. And we'll do some lines. Doesn't matter about them being straight. I'll do it in that direction. I can't see what I'm doing. Yeah, they don't need to be straight. The Posca pens, they come in different thicknesses. So you can get thicker lines with a thicker nib, or you can get thinner lines with a thinner nib. So again, I just do this because once, it doesn't have to be perfect, because once it's cut up into your collage or whatever it is you're doing, you're only using, let me show you, you're only using a very small piece just to bring a pop of colour. So they don't have to be perfect. Okay, and I think perhaps to finish off, we will do, should we do some paints? Let's do some paints on the tissue paper. Let's see what happens. So let's just go for this dark green. This is acrylic. Let's put a little bit out. You can always, if you feel like the acrylic's too thick, just water it down a little bit. So I'm going to use a round tipped brush so that I can kind of make a blob with it and let the brush do the work for me. Can you see? Am I on camera? There you go. That's quite a nice effect. I quite like that. And don't worry if it goes over the other bit, because you can match up the mix and match the patterns. And basically this is what I do. I just do different patterns, different shapes. I don't overthink it. I just get it done. Because then I've got lots of different papers to put away that I can then come back to and use. So there you go. Okay, so that's the tissue paper. I'll put that to one side to dry. Now let's have a go with, I'll wipe this brush off. Let's have a go with the paint on the newsprint paper, because I've never actually tried that. I've always just been using the Posca pens. So we can give that a try. Let's go have a drink. There you go. I don't know how successfully that came off, but right, so let's try the gouache. So put a little bit in here. And perhaps this time we'll use the bigger brush. And let's try drawing some lines. This colour's beautiful. Love that colour. So just drawing some lines. I don't worry that the lines aren't the same thickness all the way through. I don't worry if it fades off, because it's all part of the effect. And when you come to use them in your work, it will just add texture and dimension. So none of this has to be perfect. It's just mark making and seeing what you can come up with. Okay, so those are quite thick lines using the bigger paintbrush. Just get the last bit. Maybe we'll do a really fat line there. Break them up a little bit like that. Okay, that's that paint finished. Let's give that a little bit of a wipe. I may do some more fat ones. And I think I will do them in this pinky colour. I really like using the neon colours, because when you just use a little bit of them in your projects, let me show you. Can I find one? Yeah, here. Just a little bit of the neon colour just brings your project to life, I think. So I love using these really bright neon colours. I'm going to do some fatter lines like that. Now, obviously I'm not doing lots here because I'm on video, but I would, I'd make sure I did a reasonable amount of patterns so that I've got enough to go at basically when I'm, you know, when I'm, I can't do and talk at the same time, when I'm cutting them up for a collage. So that's that. I'll show you how I did the leaves. This is a gouache. It's in a gorgeous kind of teal colour. Oh, might be. Are you going to come out? Yes. It's an old one, this one. It's got a little bit stuck. So for the leaves, this is how I do the leaves. Again. Is that gouache? Yeah, this is gouache, but it's a little bit thicker. What I might do is just put a tiny bit of water onto my paintbrush, just to water it down a little bit. Doesn't need to be loads, but this has gone quite thick. Okay, that's better. So for the leaves, all I do is this. Kind of this type of shape. Like that, and then maybe one coming off the other way. And this is why I say when I'm doing things like this, I like to use gouache, because I feel like I have more control over the shapes. If I was using acrylic, I wouldn't get such a fluid movement with the paint. Now again, these don't have to be perfect. I've got somewhere on this desk, where is it? Here we go. That was some leaves that I did on some tissue paper that I cut out to use. Didn't end up using it. But yeah, again, they don't have to be perfect, because you're going to cut them up and use them in a collage. You're going to layer them. And any mistakes, or what you think are mistakes, because really there aren't any mistakes, but anything you're not quite happy with, you can just either not use that bit, or just cover it up. So there you go, that's how I did the leaves. It's generally how, when I do leaves, it's generally how I do a leaf. When I'm drawing patterns and things. And when I'm doing illustrations. There you go. So that's a little bit of an idea there of what you could do. And since I've got paint on my brush, I'll maybe just do some scallops. See there now how the paint, with it being a little bit thicker, was causing me some problems. This is quite a nice shape. See if I can use the tip to get some thinner ones. So there you go. So let's put that to one side, and let's just have a quick look at using, and I'll have to use this one again because I've got so much paint on my brush, at using some paint on to book page. So this is a good one to do. Lines like this of different length. Like that. I'm going to go across this way so that I get a good amount of area covered. You can do fat ones, thin ones, some longer ones. Just try and add some variation in to make it look interesting, like that. And what I think I might do as well, I've just spotted this. Just the last bit of what do you call that? Twine. So I wonder if we use that. I might have to put it. I wonder if we did that, what would happen? It's quite interesting, isn't it? That would make a nice pattern to use. This reminds me of kind of like an under the water or a sea themed project. So that's quite a fun thing to do. So have a look around your house and see, you know, see what you've got around you and things that you could make. I've got a smaller one here which could be used to make some smaller circles. So yeah, I just wanted to do this part first before we went into making ephemera, just to show you where I start off and how I come about with these different sheets of paper to use. So I hope you found that helpful. I will put some some photos at the end to show you what these look like once they are dry. I will, if I can find the link to these acrylic pens, I will try and put that on as well. It's not an affiliate link. I don't have any kind of affiliation like that, so I don't earn any commission on it. It would just simply be just to let you know where you can find it. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed that. I'm looking forward to coming back with you next time and having a go and seeing what we can do with what we've created. I think the main things to take away from this is that use what you have, use different types of paper, experiment, see what effects you can get with those papers, different types of mediums, different pens. You could use gel pens. You don't have to use what I've used. This is just what I have been using recently and probably my preferred. But you use what you have, and don't go out buying anything special. If you don't have Posca pens or you don't have acrylic pens, don't use them. Just use whatever cheap paint you get. I am actually going to try using some watercolour on some book pages and seeing what effect I get there as well, because that's something I haven't done. So again, I'm just going to have an experiment and have some fun and see what happens. So I hope you enjoyed that. I will see you next time. I'm looking forward to it, and have a lovely day, everybody. Take care. Bye bye.